August has been quietly stacking up some great games, and not gonna lie, a few simply too good to let slip under the radar. Hello friends, welcome back. This is Mobile. Today we're gonna be checking out 20 more new mobile games of August you probably need to try while they're still hot.
And wealth begets ill.
For those of you who missed it, Whirlwinds meets Nick's update is about to land in 4 days, and developers finally came up with a trailer. This Heaven's Threshold new update adds a new mountain region, there's a new dungeon, a story campaign, 2 more new combat skills, and this solo survival mode for the festival. Add in racing, additional trade routes, more exploration. This is without a doubt looking like another seriously loaded update to go. Moving on. Coming up behind that at number 2, we've got Apex Fishing. I'm not even sure where this gym sort of even came from, but it's a kind of fishing game that expects you to know what you're doing. You know, like fishes behave differently, your tackle matters, you're like basically all the time managing things like the reel drag and rod tension instead of just simply tapping. You've got lakes, rivers, different species, proper bait, and a ridiculous amount of gear to play around with. This is about as close as mobile fishing gets to sitting beside the water with a rod in your hand. It's a free game, it's online. We actually give it a solid 9.5 out of 10. Auto Fire, which actually came out a little less than 48 hours ago, is an action first-person shooter, but it's sort of stripped down. It's a 5v5 where the gun does the shooting itself and you just do the thinking. Sort of give it a little old-school arcade feel, if you know what I mean. Like you move, you position yourself, watch the angles, and let the auto fire system just handle the trigger work, and the rest is familiar territory. You know, different weapons, upgrades, team-based matches, and a bunch of different maps. It's a free game, it's online. I think it is controller support. If you've been playing shooters since the old days, you like arcade shooting, well, Autofire is a pretty interesting little mix that's actually coming from an indie developer. Power Wash Simulator, the official desktop. The full game is also now not only limited to Apple Arcades, it's actually available for iOS in general. It is also rumored to be coming out to Android by the end of the month. It's a pretty decent port so far, we're pretty happy to report that. The game was like already an obsessive time consumer on PC. It's just now a tad leveled up because you can now take it anywhere you want. It's a free game, takes you 1.5 gigabytes in total, it plays offline, plays with a controller. You can also play it online if you want it. Pretty good game. With that being said, Kick Buds at number 12 is in fact Konami taking football, throwing out the rulebook, and turning it into a 3 versus 3 versus 3 party brawl type of game, where 3 teams fight over multiple balls and the first sight to 5 goals takes the match. There's also then a party royal where 8 players go through different challenges like races and target practices with 3 rounds standing between you and the win. And you can also play the game solo or with friends. I'd argue it is one of the more interesting multiplayer games on mobile right now. Check it out, it's still in a beta. So here's some good news. Goat Sim 3 is now finally available on the Google Play Pass. And like you won't have to pay $12 anymore if you've got the Play Pass, meaning you're getting the full experience without having to buy the full game separately with all the seasonal content updates included. I would argue that this is exactly the kind of game that belongs here, mainly because of the price. There's also no real grand story here, no mission structure, absolutely no reason not to play it for at least a couple of minutes. One of the dumbest, most unpredictable, and weirdly addictive mobile ports basically ever made. Going up to number 7, we've got this thing here called Red Dustlands, which came our way from the same folks in charge of Still and Flesh mobile games, and it is genuinely a pretty good attempt at Red Dead Redemption for free. It's not near Rockstar's level, of course, but that's actually kind of the charm. You get to ride around the world on horseback, hunting wildlife, getting into shootouts, taking odd jobs, just making your own adventure. If you can look past the little bit of rough edge here, there's something surprisingly authentic about it. One of the coolest Wild West games, in fact, that you can actually find on the wall right now for free.
A new servant. I have hired you to take care of my brother and sister and I during our family reunion celebration.
Servant of the Lake is finally out today on Android and iOS, and it's a little different for those of you who experienced the previous games because this is basically Rusty Lake giving you the front door key and letting you snoop around before the real story begins. If you played Rusty Lake games before, this feels immediately familiar, and if you haven't, this is a pretty damn good introduction to the series as well. It's just now you, as a newly hired servant, handling ordinary chores until it's everything but. Check it out, it's offline, takes you $4.99. Dungeons of Hinterberg is here on our list for the second time because it was in our previous video, but the reason it is here is because it actually landed today on the Apple Store as well, and it's already got a patch and it just works perfectly. The game was already one of 2024's highest rated indie RPGs, and for good reason as well. Dungeons are genuinely clever if it builds on the last one, and the world just captures that old classic Zelda magic better than most games that actually try to copy Zelda. Combat's pretty good, art's gorgeous, the whole thing really has this cozy vacation vibe that just works. If you've got a Crunchyroll subscription, this is easily one of the best premium quality games you can play in your phone right now. There's no reason really not to play it.
Hothead Paws.
Going up to number 10, we've got this thing called Run Out, which is a party comedy game to an extent done perfectly right, where you pick an animal, play random mini games, traps, stealing coins, generally making sure nobody you came with leaves the match feeling respected, you know? The challenges sort of mix reflex, memory, and good old-fashioned dirty play, while the animal cast itself comes with different personalities and abilities. It's a free game, it's online, sort of feels built for quick matches, basically Saturday morning cartoon characters with the morals of a multiplayer lobby. So, Drift Ride 2 on another hand, doesn't even try to be a racing game. I mean, it is a racing game, but it's not like trying to do whatever the other million racing games are doing already. It's just a good driving game that wants you to have a good time behind the wheel. Just a few minutes in playing, you stop worrying about winning or looking for excuses and coming to your senses that it's not about that. The handling has a pretty easy to learn, hard to master feel once you find a car you like. Cruising around becomes just as fun as the races themselves. It actually reminds me of those old school mobile races that you just basically lose hours into without even noticing. Prior to this, we've mentioned How Many Dudes, the game. We're glad to report the game's out on Android and iOS, and it's in pretty good shape. And for those of you who missed it, I'd argue it's the kind of game that reminds you why indie developers in fact still exist. The name's pretty ridiculous, of course. The idea is ridiculous as well, but it all works. So the story is you recruit an army of these incredibly absurd dudes, stack completely broken different synergies, and just sit back as the battlefield itself turns into pure nonsense. Every run in the game feels different. There's like 100 different relics, trinkets, over 1 million possible team combinations. It's one of those rare auto battlers where experimenting is just as entertaining as winning itself. Case Solved the London Files here knows legit what it wants to be. Pretty straightforward game and just sticks to it. Pretty straightforward game. Don't play this game expecting an opera den detective game. This is like a much lighter mystery game that's built around hidden object scenes and logic puzzles, you know? Cases are pretty charming, hand-drawn art's pretty good, piecing together each solution is satisfying enough that it's actually hard to stop after one case. If you enjoy detective games but like don't always want something mentally exhausting kind of game, it's a pretty easy recommendation. It has a free demo, full game's about $8. A little less than 24 hours ago, THQ Nordic came up with the announcement that Disney Epic Mickey Rebrushed is now due in about 5 days for Android and iOS. In fact, this is one of the better news we could have here this month. In fact, Rebrushed was one of those remakes that actually had something worth preserving, since the original had a slightly forgotten Disney identity, but then Rebrushed gave that idea a much cleaner, modern coat of paint. You know, we've got new movement abilities, controller support. This is without a doubt one of the best action adventures coming to Android and iOS, and it'll actually be playable offline as well. Number 15, we've got Angry Neighbor Plus Legacy. It's the same old good old Angry Neighbor. It's just now offline and actually a little overhaul with some simple controls and then the good old-fashioned hide-and-seek the hell out approach to horror. The kind of horror game where curiosity gets you into the house of a stranger, common sense then immediately clocks out. The house sort of gives you plenty of room to explore and just poke around, but the neighbor, wants you gone. Check it out in case you missed it. It's available now on Android. Takes you 250 megabytes in total. Going down to number 16, we've got Chariot Rivals. It's a rare case of game we get maybe once a month, if we're lucky, that nobody even asked for until you play it though. So instead of another racing game here, which is, it is a racing game by the way, it turns ancient chariot racing into this chaotic skill game where every corner matters just as much, knocking down your other rivals right off the track. The pixel art actually gives it a lot of charm, the racing feels very satisfying, and it even gives a respectful nod to the real history behind the sports instead of just using it as a backdrop. It's a little weird, definitely different, and legit one of the coolest indie releases on mobile right now. Breach and Clear number 17 is just classic. It actually feels like a pocket-sized mix of Rainbow and XCOM, and even today in fact, there aren't many mobile games that scratch that same tactical itch twice a day. If you've never played either one of those or this one before, you're gonna be in for a treat. You spend a minute carefully planning a breach, everyone hits their position, you watch the mayhem unfold, 2 seconds later, the whole operation's gone completely sideways. Pretty tense game, really rewarding, maybe even one of the most satisfying tactical experiences you can actually play on mobile right now for free. Solterra Odyssey here takes match 3 and gives it a sort of a big punch, where you're basically matching pieces to activate skills, build combos, etc. while this roguelike system and RPG progression keeps things very challenging because it kind of depicts how your next run's gonna look. It's an online game, it's free with a progression system sitting underneath the puzzle mechanics, a pretty clever way to make match 3 feel less like doing homework, more like actually fighting something. The basic matching is pretty easy, getting a good build together is where the game starts to earn its keep. Pixel Chronicles at number 19, in fact, has that old school pixel RPG look, but then underneath it is a pretty modern adventure. In fact, the real meats in the co-op dungeons and the co-op raids where bosses actually have patterns worth learning instead of just being some longer health bars. There's different modes, PvP, arenas, etc. Plenty to grind basically in a surprisingly comfortable mix of hands-on combat and lazy progression. Basically, the kind of pixel art RPG that understands nobody wants to manually do the same thing over and over. Number 20, we've got Animatronic Bear Horror. It's a puzzle horror game, but it takes one of the oldest tricks in horror and builds the whole game around that idea. Keep looking at the monster. A flashlight and just a minimap. The story is you're stuck inside this warehouse doing tasks in different nights, trying not to panic every time you're trying to look around. It's a free game, it's offline, only 100 megabytes in total, making it a pretty straightforward game with just one simple rule. Never trust anything you can't see. Clockmech Oasis, I would argue, is one of those indie games that became a pretty big the moment it landed on mobile. It already was a pretty big hit on PC. So Clockmech Oasis is actually mixing roguelike shooting with tower defense in a way that sounds strange on paper but works ridiculously well once you get going, You're constantly running around fighting enemies while building turrets, gathering resources and trying to keep your base alive. So there's barely a dull moment here. And before you even know it, you've spent an hour saying just one more. If you enjoy games like Vampire Survivors or strategy roguelikes with a lot more player involvement, this one's definitely worth trying. And finally, last but not least, Hypnospace Outlaw is probably the strangest game on the list today, and I actually mean that as a compliment. And instead of saving kingdoms or shooting zombies or managing an empire, well, you're basically dropped into a fake version of the late 90s internet, digging through these hilariously awful websites, getting completely distracted by all the weird stuff people have uploaded there. It somehow captures the magic, the cringe, and the randomness of the early web better than almost anything I've ever seen. Very clever game, genuinely funny, quite entertaining as well, It's got a free demo. If it clicks for you, get the whole thing. There's really nothing else quite like it. Thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. Let me know which one's your favorite, and I'll see you again tomorrow.